Hello, my name is Jody, and on day 5 of my vacation to beautiful Nicaragua, I went to a garbage dump. It had a pretty big impact on me, and I just wanted to share my experience. Now, if I wanted, I could totally show you the obligatory images of a naked third world child and a 3-legged dog and play some sad music and tug on your emotions for 10 minutes, but that's not my intention. I just want to share my experience. See, the people who live by the garbage dump don't want pity. They certainly didn't want me to look at them with my privileged Canadian eyes and judge their lifestyle. They didn't want me to feel sorry for them, and none of them ever asked me for money. Like any other human being, they have pride and dignity, and are doing the best they can to survive. Now, I absolutely believe that every human being on earth deserves a much higher quality of life than living in a garbage dump. But even if this video goes viral and raises millions of dollars to help relocate the families out of the dump, the fact is the majority of them would move back. It's happened before and it would happen again. Why? Well, let me share my experience of life in the garbage dump. In November 1998, Hurricane Mitch created massive flooding across Central America and destroyed over 40,000 homes in Nicaragua. As a result, approximately 3,000 people were relocated to a spot right beside the dump. Today, around 2,000 people still live there. Some of the locals refer to this place as the Circle of Death, which is made up of the garbage dump, the cemetery, and the constantly leaking sewage treatment plant. I booked my trip to Nicaragua with the folks at Development Tours. The idea was to stay at a place that actually gives back to the community, rather than just creating high-stress, low-paying jobs. For that reason, we stayed at Monty's Beach Lodge, who donate 30% of their revenue to the local community. Monty also regularly puts on a tour of the dump. Part of our schedule was to hop on a yellow school bus and make food for some of the people who live there. The only way to access this community is to drive down this trench, which is flanked by a scary-looking wall on one side and a graveyard on the other side. The trench itself is filled with sewage and all kinds of trash. As we were very slowly bumping down this sketchy road, I thought it would really suck if we got stuck. And I'm very glad that we didn't. As we approached the community, our guide said that we wouldn't be going into the dump itself, as most people tend to get overwhelmed and depressed seeing filthy children digging through garbage. Our main purpose for being there was to cut vegetables and serve food. I suppose I was feeling a bit selfish. I didn't sit on that sketchy bus ride to not go into the dump and experience the full thing. So when a few people broke off from the main group, I was excited to follow along. It was a bit ominous walking towards the dump. It hadn't rained for a couple months. The field we walked across was totally dry, with this really fine dust that coated our legs. We got filthy without even having to walk into the dump. It seemed like there was a bit of tension in the air. I think we all knew we wouldn't like what we were about to see. On the way, I reminded myself that I wasn't there to stare at a train wreck or color what I saw with predetermined judgments. I know that I personally would be really unhappy living in a garbage dump, but I'd also heard that most people who move away usually end up moving back. It seemed they actually preferred living there. If I was going to gain any perspective, I would need to keep my own opinions in check. I also wanted to be respectful and not just be another tourist with a camera. There was a little stream of sewage that blocked our entrance to the dump, and I thought of it as a test to see who really wanted to go into this place. The stream was our last opportunity to turn around. A couple people did, but the rest of us carefully tiptoed on these slimy rocks to get across. Locals call this dangerous place the Circle of Death for a reason. If the broken glass and sharp objects don't kill you, the toxic smoke created by burning garbage definitely will. See, this dump isn't a landfill, it's an actual garbage dump, and they burn it to get rid of it, so all of the garbage is in some form of burning or at least smoldering. I have a really strong sense of smell and was grateful that it didn't smell too strongly of hot, rotting trash, though the smell of hot burning trash wasn't exactly pleasant either. Some of the locals waved at us, some of them ignored us as they walked by with big heavy bags of who knows what on their backs. Some of them came and talked with us, and we shook hands with big friendly smiles. Jess of Development Tours is super fluent in Spanish and started making friends with the locals. Before we knew it, we were going on a personalized tour of the dump. We got some inside stories and learned how everybody who lives there sells everything they find to the guy who owns this proud estate. He wasn't too happy that we were filming his place, like he wanted to keep it a secret, but he certainly wasn't hiding his wealth either. While Jess was making friends, I noticed one of the locals had some items for sale and thought I'd show some support to the local business. So I bought a bag of chips from this guy. Yes, I bought food in the garbage dump community, and I ate it, and it was tasty. I bought it for 2 Cordobas, which works out to about 8 cents. Naturally, there were no garbage cans available, so I decided to keep the bag. Incidentally, this is the only souvenir I brought home with me. It's my only physical reminder of my experience at the dump. It's kind of funny that I've given it personal significance, whereas down there it would have just been thrown on the street. Our local guide Mirsa brought us into her home. We noticed the piece of barbed wire hanging across her kitchen that served as a clothesline. I had a look at her home entertainment system and checked out the family heirloom in the doorway. Once her brother figured that we weren't just regular tourists looking for something to gawk at, he showed us some of his occupational scars, brought us to his home, and showed us his treasure. While I was standing there listening to them talk, I totally didn't understand what they were saying, but it did dawn on me that this man was a prospector. But instead of searching for gold or diamonds, he looks for bottles, paper, copper wires, and anything he can use in his home. Part of this man's story is that he has access to a non-stop supply of income. There's always a new truck arriving every day, and it always comes at 2 p.m. He always knows where his next paycheck is coming from, and he feels security in that. This was the point where I began to understand why people move into the dump and stay there. It's because they get to be entrepreneurial in a way. They don't have to deal with abuse from horrible bosses. When they come home at the end of the day with a bag full of items that are worth money, they get to feel good about themselves. People living at the dump have more control over how much money they make than people who work at a shop or factory. Or rather, they have the illusion of control. There is the constant possibility that a truck might come and bring heaps of treasure. And there's also the constant possibility that it will bring nothing of any value whatsoever. They could starve for a whole month, but they could also strike it rich. So they're willing to take that risk. Personally, I think it's that constant glimmer of hope that keeps them going. While I was walking around hearing everybody's stories, I tried to put myself into their shoes and pretend that I lived there. As a result, I found myself justifying and saying that it was basically all okay, that there was tons of opportunity to be had at the dump, that there was still love and family and connection. The vast majority of tourists who visit the dump don't see that. So, do I just have a really positive outlook, or was I in denial? Maybe it really does suck to live there. Maybe there is a lot of opportunity. Maybe it's both. To this man, it didn't matter that the work was dangerous or highly toxic. He didn't seem too affected by the possibility of dying young. He had been there for 5 years, and unless something traumatic happened and he felt he'd need to leave, he would be there until his eventual death by disease, resulting from exposure to his toxic environment. After that, we walked back to the community center and rejoined the main group. I watched people play baseball and observed a few volunteers serving food. While the general mood of the place seemed happy, I noticed my own energy was really low. Actually, I was kind of depressed. I was surprised by this because I wasn't there to feel bad. I was there to be neutral and accepting and just observe life through other people's perspectives. That's when I try to lighten things up by finding a kid and making funny noises. After that, I took a turn in the kitchen, scooping with a big ladle into a bubbling cauldron full of sharp, scary fish bones. I didn't find the food to be particularly appetizing, and to be honest, the kids didn't seem too excited about it either. Earlier, while my friends Jess and Warren were talking with the locals, they'd made kind of an offhand comment, "Hey, maybe we'll do a documentary. Maybe we'll live here for a couple weeks and pay for our food and lodging strictly through what we scavenge at the dump." The locals said, "Yeah, that's a great idea."
She wants to know when we might be able to come.
Good question.
As I left the dump in Chinandega, I felt I'd gained a higher understanding of why people might want to live there. I'm really excited to see what my friends find during the course of creating their documentary. Perhaps sometime next year we'll have the opportunity to see how challenging and rewarding it really is to live among what most of us would consider a toxic wasteland. It may all be a matter of perspective. As the saying goes, one man's trash is another man's treasure. In the case of the dump in Chinandega, one man's garbage is another man's meal ticket.